Hey there, coming at you with another one of these free-form exploration video tutorial things. I just was approached by somebody and they asked, how would I handle animating between moving of elements with Livewire? So in their case, they had a bunch of rows in a table. They wanted to be able to change the sort order of those rows and see the rows kind of like animate to their new position instead of just abruptly change. So I thought this is going to be really tough and maybe this is outside the bounds of what you should be doing with Livewire. And I was totally wrong. It's super cool and I want to show you. All right, so here we have a list of things and our goal is that when we hit shuffle, we want these all to shuffle, but not instantly. We want them to animate into their new position. So let's start by implementing this little shuffle button. So here is the shuffle button. It's just a bunch of tailwind and a plain button. So let's add a wire click and then a shuffle method, okay? And then inside shuffle, we are going to shuffle this array. So this things array is now equal to array shuffle this things, okay? And then we'll import that. Great. So now when I hit shuffle, all of the things get shuffled around. And that's perfectly great. We love it. Okay, so one little thing to note about anytime you're for eaching, you've probably seen this in the docs, and if you're used to V4 in Vue or X4 in Alpine, you have to add keys to the item. So in Livewire's case, it's it's wire : key. And let me quickly explain to you why this is so important. Because without the keys, if we take an element, like let's say dust shelves, so here it is, and let's get this element in the console, $0 is like a little shortcut to get the last thing you selected. Okay, so we have this li as this little $0, and if we do $0 dot hey equals there, whatever. Okay, so we've attached some data to this actual DOM element, this dust shelves. So check this out. If we hit shuffle, and now if we grab dust shelves, wherever that is, okay, and then let's do that same thing. Let's get hey, and hey is undefined. But if we grab fold laundry, and then try that, hey is set. So what you saw there is that Livewire has no idea that these are different elements. So it actually thinks, okay, they've shuffled these around. This element should now be fold laundry, the text content, instead of dust shelves. So then it's going to manually set that. So if we add wire key and then some unique key here, you can't just put a number because then they'll all have the same key. So for us, we'll echo out thing ID. And that's a key that we set right over here. You could do, there's a bunch of different things you could do, but this way we have an actual unique key for each iteration. So let's try this again. If we take do dishes, and then let's add that hey thing right there. Okay, then we hit shuffle. Oh, it didn't actually move. Let's try that again. Okay, now we have do dishes down here. And then if we say $0 dot hey, we have there. Okay, so we know that this is the same actual DOM element, even though it moved. It didn't. Before, nothing actually moved. The text contents just got reset. Now we actually moved the elements around. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Okay, great. So I just wanted to clarify that. And that's super important here because if we're going to animate these elements, we need to make sure that it's the same element being used before we hit shuffle and after. Otherwise, there's nothing to animate. Okay, so that is that part. Now let's talk a little bit about animations in general. So maybe first, my mental model for how we would accomplish this, I had no idea. I was like, okay, so let's see. Before we hit shuffle, like let's say if we somehow reach into Livewire and hijack it at that point where it goes to actually change the HTML, which a reminder, when you do something like that in Livewire, the HTML comes back from the server right here in this big string, and then it gets swapped into the page intelligently. So if we could hook into that somehow, we could maybe prevent it from moving the element and then discover where it would have wanted it to move and then animate it to that point. But I couldn't quite see it all as a clear picture until I sort of thought about it in the opposite way. So before we talk about exactly how we're going to do it, let's talk about how we animate these elements in general. So I don't know if you're familiar with CSS animations, but they're freaking fantastic. Or actually in this case, they're just transitions, but it's like two similar APIs. So let's say this clean counters here, and let's say that we can do, let's say transition, all, and I don't know, for 1 second with easing, okay? And now if we do, let's just do an opacity. If we set opacity to 0, look how it fades out. Now if we set opacity to 1, okay, because all of these transition-y properties, opacity and transform, they will now be applied this like little animation curve thing, which is totally awesome and so freaking easy and really performant. So if we do transform, translate, whoopsie, what happened? Transform, I guess you probably saw it on the screen as I was doing it. Transform, translate, Y. Oh my gosh, I can't do it. Well, you saw it. Okay, you can see it's already kind of shifted there. This is what you can do. So if we make this 100, bam, it animates down. Okay, so this is going to be the secret sauce. And actually further than this, rather than having to like use JavaScript to update CSS of elements, which works but is a little annoying, there's an actual animation API built into browsers now. So if we get this clean counters here, and then let's do $0, to get our actual element there. And if we do .animate, we can pass in keyframes, which are really just animation properties. So in our case, let's say opacity, we want to be 0. And then you can specify things like duration will be 1,000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. And then easing is going to be ease, okay? And check that out. It just faded out and then it popped back in because the animation was finished. And of course, just like before, instead of opacity, we can easily do transform, translate Y 20 pixels. Okay, now when I hit this, watch clean counters, it's gonna move. Bam, and there it go. It just animated 20 pixels down. So this is gonna be a savior for us because it allows us to easily use JavaScript to apply animations. Okay, so there's basically all we need to know. That's all the tech we need to learn first. And now let's talk about the technique. Like I said, I thought it was going to be really difficult and annoying. I thought that there was going to be some magic where I'd have to expose some underlying thing in Livewire, and I didn't even have the picture clearly. And then I thought, what about this? What about we hook in with JavaScript before Livewire does its manipulation, before Livewire actually does that change? And we basically log all of the, let's just say X and Y coordinates of these elements on the page, okay? So if we grab all the distances from the top for this one and this one and this one, then we do the shuffle, and because we stored those distances, we can look at the new plate, like if scrub toilets is here now, we can look at this distance and subtract and take the difference of the two and then transform it immediately to the old position and then translate it with an animation to the new position. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of a reversal in thinking. Instead of taking an element and animating it to the new position, we're letting it go to the new position and then like immediately transforming it back so that it looks like it's where it was before and then animating it into its current position. So hopefully that makes sense, but I'll flesh it out a little bit more in the code. So let's check that out. So basically what we definitely need a way to hook into that point, hook into before Livewire does its thing and then right after Livewire does its thing. And fortunately, Livewire makes this really easy for us. So here's the actual layout file of the page I'm viewing. It's just basically the standard Laravel welcome page. I just stripped out a bunch of stuff. And then this is our Livewire component, and this is our Livewire JavaScript assets. So let's add a script here, and we're going to say livewire.hook. And now we can hook into things from Livewire. You can look in the docs if you want, or this hook manager file in Livewire's core shows you all the available hooks. So there's these message hooks, and this is when a message goes out to the server. You can hook into the message being sent, failed, received, or processed. So received means that the message came back, but we haven't done anything with it. And then processed means we did something with it. So we want received and processed. So let's take this message received, and then we'll register a callback here, and we'll console.log received. Okay. Actually, yeah, we'll just do that. Okay. So that works. We got that received, but to even further demonstrate, let's add a debugger hook here. You can do this if you haven't seen that. You can just type debugger and check this out. If we hit shuffle now, it's going to pause execution right here, which is extremely useful for a million reasons, but this shows us that nothing has shifted until we hit play. Okay, then everything shifts. So let's take a look at that other hook that we need. We need processed, so processed, okay? So now when we hit shuffle, we get the same exact thing from before. Nothing has changed. We hit play. It pauses again on processed, and this time it should have shuffled things, but I don't even know. Okay, it did. It just was a subtle shuffle. Let's try that again. We're paused on no change. Now watch all the items. They're going to change. There we go, okay? So that's our before and after hook, and that's basically what we need here. All right, so what are we going to do inside this? Well, let's just start with one for now. Let's just animate the first item so that we don't have to, I don't know, just a little bit easier. So let's animate do dishes. So we're going to add a little attribute here. We're going to call animate move. Okay. And then let's say let thing equal document.querySelector animate move. Okay. And that's going to get our HTML element. And now let's store, let's say old top. This is going to be we're going to call them old and new top, meaning top is going to be the distance from the top. The old one is the one before and the new one is the one after. So we're going to say old top equals thing. Now, how are we going to get that distance? Now, there's a bunch of different ways to do this in JavaScript, but let me just show you the best way. If you take an element, this is so ridiculously handy for so many things. There's this get bounding client rect, the worst method name ever, but it's awesome. If you run that on an element, it'll give you basically the XY coordinates to the, not to the viewport per se, but to the container. It'll give you the distance from the bottom, the height, the distance from the left, the right, the top. It's awesome. This is like everything you need all in one little chunk. You don't have to do that math anymore where you're like, okay, I need to get the, I don't know, whatever, like window.client height, and I always get confused. But all you need is get bounding rect. It's really nice. So get bounding client rect dot top, and that's going to be our distance from the top. Okay. So that's that, and we can make sure that that worked really quick. Console.log old top. Okay, great. And now if we hit shuffle, we get, we have a stray debugger statement, but you'll see that we console.logged out 27, which is the distance to the top, 27.72 pixels. Okay, great. So we've stored the old top here, and now after we shuffle them, we want to get the new top. So yeah, and we're going to be actually duplicating a lot of things. So what if we did this? Let thing up here, let old top. And now, because we declared them in the outer scope, we can set them in this inner scope and then also use them in this scope. So we can say thing dot, let's say let new top equal, and this is going to be thing dot get bounding client rect dot top. Okay. So get bounding client rect is going to get us the coordinates of the element at the current time, which here it hasn't moved. So that's our old top. But then after we move it with Livewire, this new top is going to be after we moved it. Okay. And now we do our animation business. So this is where we're going to say thing.animate, and we can pass in multiple frames. So this is like animating from one thing to the other. So we want to animate from transform translate Y, and we'll actually change these to backticks so that we can concatenate a little bit nicer. Okay, or interpolate, whatever. Okay, so if we say old top minus new top pixels, that's going to give us the difference of the position from this new area to the last area. Okay, and then we're going to add another keyframe, which is translate Y 0 pixels, and this is going to put it back to where it belongs. So it's going to basically immediately jolt it to that new spot. We're not even going to see a blip because the browser hasn't painted yet, and then we're going to transform it right to the existing spot. And then let's add a duration. We'll say 1 second. Duration 1 second, and then we'll say easing is going to be ease. Okay, great. Now let's take a look at this, see if this works. So check out do dishes. When I hit shuffle, hey, it animated to its new location. And so now we have a thing going on where this is only, well, first let me just stop and say, that's pretty much the gist. Like, you understand now. Like, I think this is really clean compared to so many other tactics that you could use for something like this. I was just really surprised that I came out of this whole process thinking, wow, I think this is actually good and not janky or bad at all. So if we hit shuffle, it's going to always be animating the first item. We do that again, watch fold laundry. Yep, see, and then clean counters. Didn't move that time, still didn't move, clean counters. Okay, and that's because every single time a message is received, we're getting thing from document.querySelector. All right, so our architecture is like not ideal right now because we're only animating the first one. So if we want to animate all of them, we're going to want to do something instead of things. We're going to want like things. Sorry, instead of thing, we're going to want things. So let's say things, and then here query selector all, and now we have a bunch of things. But this is kind of a hurdle for us because it's like, okay, we stored old top. Now do we have to say old tops and then store all the old tops and then get all the new tops and then hope that they are aligned perfectly, and we might run into weird issues with them not being aligned and then we're animating the wrong things. I don't know. I think this is kind of a smell at this point where I'm like, okay, I have two hooks that are sharing data, because they're both concerned about some of the same things. So in these cases, this is a technique that I really like, is like, get that stuff out of the outer scope, keep it in the inner scope. So let's say let things, and then we're also going to say things dot something like, you would do something like for each or map to get all the old top. So let's say dot map, and this is going to be thing. Okay, that's going to be passed in there. All right, and then here we could be saying something like old tops, but here is a really cool technique that I use all the time in a bunch of different ways, and I don't even know the right word to call it. But what we're going to do is actually store, we're going to use the global scope again. Sorry, I told you we weren't going to, but we're going to say animations. And then what we're going to do here is actually store this code in a callback. So like when message is received, we're going to execute this code, but then we're going to return, or in this case, we're going to, why did I say anything? What is wrong with me? Okay. In this case, we're actually going to return callbacks that do all the work that we want to do. So we can just run the callbacks down here, and that way we have access to the scope. So if it doesn't make sense, you're going to see it make sense in a second. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to say, actually, we don't want that. We want to say things map. So go through every single thing that we got out of the DOM, map through them, and return a callback. And so all this code we're going to put inside, all this code we are going to put inside that callback. There we go. That's the shortcut key. Okay. So now this animations here is going to just be an array full of callbacks that we can just call in message processed. And now we can access something like old top directly. So let's, this is turning into a mess. I'm so sorry. So here we're going to say old top. No, here we say old top. Sorry, because we're in a loop now. So we have things in a loop, and then the first thing, every item we get the old top and the new top inside that callback. And now we can access old top and new top and thing, and we are all good to go. Okay, and then in message processed, we'll add a little while loop, and we'll say while animations.length. And now inside of this, we'll say animations.shift, which is going to pull the first item of the animations array off and actually remove it and return it, so we can just call it. And then this loop is going to run out once they've all shifted off. So this is a nice little trick I use, this while and then the shift, as a way of just putting things on a stack and then just popping them all off, or in this case, shifting. I think you could use pop instead if you wanted to do that, but whatever. Okay. So here we go. Hopefully this looks okay to you. We can review it in a second. And of course you can review the code yourself, but now let's check it out. Doesn't work. Things.map is not a function. So it's not a function because document.querySelectorAll doesn't actually return an array. It returns, I forget, an element list or something like that. But we can just turn it into an array by doing array from. And now if we say shuffle, check it out. They all shuffle. They shuffle really well. That's totally awesome. Okay, so there is, and just to remind you, let's just walk through this really quickly. What we have going on is we have this animations array that's empty. Now when a message is received, but none of the HTML has actually changed, we're going to grab all of the things we want to animate, loop through them, get their old tops, and return a callback. So this isn't going to actually run this code right now. It's just going to return a callback that gets the new top and does the animation. And then inside of message processed, we'll just run all those callbacks. Then this code will actually be executed. So I think this is really elegant because it keeps all of the scope and the things that are concerned with each other in the same place. And then we're just storing the animations out here. If you wanted, you could easily store these callbacks on the elements themselves. Like we did before with, you could do like .animate or something and store it on the element, and then you wouldn't need this outer scope variable, but we're going to stick with this for now. All right, so I think we're almost there, but there's just one bug in our system. If we do this and then we interrupt it, so if we're like hitting this a bunch of times, notice it doesn't really handle things very gracefully. What it's doing is starting the animation, but then MorphDOM or Livewire is going to abruptly destroy the animation because it's going to rewrite the HTML with the new elements. It's going to move them around. So we want to fix that, and the pretty simple fix, fortunately the browser makes this really easy. You can, let's go through these things again. So let's go, we'll do like things.forEach thing. Okay, So these are all the thing variables. These are all these elements right here. There's this really cool API, thing.getAnimations, and this returns to you an array, which we can for each through, and it's an array of the animation objects, which we haven't gone into it, but basically you could do this. When you do .animate, it returns an animation object that you can call .finish on to immediately finish the animation. You can call .cancel, you can hook into the finish state. Feel free to dig into the Animate API, it's totally awesome. But I'm just gonna kind of shortcut you here and say that we're gonna do animation, and then we're gonna just immediately run animation.finish to all of those things. We're basically saying what this is gonna do is that it's gonna get the old top, but then it's also gonna be like, it's going to store all the callbacks, but then it's going to be like, wait a minute, is there stuff happening right now? Okay, let's finish those animations so that here, when we when we get the HTML back, when we change the HTML, we can start from a clean slate rather than from some like midpoint state. All right, so let's try it out. Shuffle, cool. So now we can interrupt ourselves all day, and the animation is just so freaking smooth. I don't know. Oh, I think it's really freaking cool and clean, and you could make this wire animate, like, let's just see here. You could make this wire : animate move and just change your selector, and that'd be fine. You could also do things like, I don't know, you could say like wire animate move or animate duration or something equals 50, and then just, get it out of the DOM right here, and, get your new duration, whatever. So yeah, so there it is. I was surprised at how elegant it was, and I'm totally pumped. Why did it go away, folks? Because what did I change? Because I changed it to wire animate move. Yeah, I don't know. I was totally surprised at how clean it is, and I'm really pumped because I feel like this is going to come in super duper handy. You could also easily adjust this to the X and Y coordinate. Like when you're storing old top, you can store old left, and then when you transform things, do old right. Subtract the new left and top from the old left and top, and you're good to go. All right, that's it. Yeah, I'll have this code in a GitHub gist linked on at the bottom of this video, and I hope you learned something here. This is definitely, deeper stuff, and I'm not, but I don't know. I figure this is the kind of stuff that people might really enjoy. So enjoy your day and your life, and I'll see you later.